Welcome to Transformative Principal, where we interview real principals who are doing amazing things to help our students every single day. I'm your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones.
So my next question for you is how do you do this stuff at three different schools, three different sites that are 7 and 14 miles away from each other? How do you do that?
It's challenging, let me tell you that. A lot of the work, my weekly update that I create is for all three schools. So when I send it out, it goes out to all three. As far as the professional development and creating the PLC environment and things like that, I'm fairly fortunate, like I said, that the district had started that here already. And so it was a matter of me coming in and making sure my culture and my beliefs fit in with theirs. And if I find things to tweak or improve, that we do that over time. But they're really pretty good about it. And now the biggest thing is, again, trying to find more time for them to do that and things like that. So that's a matter of me next year trying to find a way to work our schedules to make that work at each building. One of the other things I do, the two out-of-town buildings have some strong teacher leaders in them. And so I can kind of go there and just come in and advise, or what are the things they really need me to do that's beyond a teacher's role kind of thing. As far as professional development and things like that, when we have our staff meetings and stuff, when we come together, the district right now has got a few different initiatives going on that have had to be a part of the focus. I don't know if you've heard or whatever, but we have educator effectiveness. It's a new evaluation system here in Wisconsin. Everyone's following the Danielson model. I shouldn't say that. You have the choice between the Danielson model or the Strong model. Jim Strong's got a model out too. Our district went with Danielson model. So our teachers right now are really learning all about that new evaluation system, observation system, and how that's going to work next year. And we've been spending a lot of time on that. The other thing is we adopted a new math series last year, the Everyday Math series, and so we're working on that piece, getting some professional development with that. The only other focus that I've really put in things on is PBIS, again, trying to create positive cultures and do more on the recognition piece rather than rewards. And I think what's the other one? Oh, RTI, making sure that our RTI is functioning well and smooth, and that we're really focused more on the intervention piece rather than it being a referral system.
Right.
So that's where our focus has really been all year, and it's been going well.
So talk to me a little bit about your RTI system and how that looks on a day-to-day basis at your school.
On a day-to-day basis, well,
your schools, plural.
Right. On a day-to-day basis, I guess really what it comes down to is we do a lot of intervention work with students. We are school-wide Title I, so every student has access to that kind of service and support if they're needed. We created an ICE time, what we call at our school, so every grade level has an intervention core and enrichment time where students can either get some really specific focused interventions, or they can go and get extra support with the core, kind of our middle of the road kids who can maybe use some review of some of the new terms, vocabulary, extra reading time with a teacher or something like that, or enrichment for our students that are a little bit higher up. They can either go to one teacher and get some real focused enrichment pieces, or maybe they're just high enough that they can go to the next grade level and do some reading work with that grade level to help increase that slightly higher scores that they have there and stuff like that, or skill area. And so we've kind of divided up our ICE time like that on a daily basis. The only other thing that I would say has happened is weekly, the title teachers and the classroom teachers come together and have conversations about student progress as far as kids that are getting interventions and things like that. Every other week, we either meet for what we call an IRT team, which is our instructional response team, where we come together and students that are having some trouble in some of those core areas, we sit down and we try to come up with other interventions for them, other possibilities, or do they need title support? Are they needing to move into that kind of thing? The other thing that we have is a BIT team, behavior intervention team. So we come together there, and that's where it's a little bit more of the PBIS, but it's the classroom piece too. So what kind of supports modifications and things like that can we make in the classroom environment to help the student be more successful? And then we check and see, is our referral data saying that this student needs a little bit more than tier 1? Do they need to move into a tier 2, more of a focused check-in, check-out system? And who would be a good check-in, check-out person for that student? Because it's not a matter of just assigning them to one person in the building. You want to have somebody that can build a relationship with that student and hopefully find out what's really bothering them to make them act out the way they may be and things like that, and come up with some possible interventions and ideas there too. Yeah. I'm pretty big, and I'm lucky that my staff is too, that they're pretty focused on the relationship piece of it is huge as far as our students being successful at school too. So we put a lot of focus on that piece.
That's great. So going back to the ICE time, how much time is that each day, and how fluid are those different groups, and how do you determine who's in I, C, and E?
We use numerous data pieces. We take the STAR assessment. We also take Ames Web data that we benchmark 3 times a year, and we use classroom pieces too. So we try to take the 3-legged stool approach there and have at least those 3 pieces of evidence when we come together and talk about our students. We have a full picture, and all of our data that we put together goes into a student information system that we have in our school, and so we're able to print off a graphic for every class and see how are the kids doing, who's in the red zone, the yellow, and things like that, and we can come together and have conversations. And like I said, they do that weekly. They come together. Now, we try not to make snap decisions, so the groups aren't so fluid that they're changing every week, but they could. If we saw data pieces that are saying the student isn't needing that, but we hate to go with just 1 week, all of a sudden they're scoring real well, so they need to move up. We want to have at least a few weeks of data there before we say, yeah, this kid has mastered that skill. They're showing it in their classroom as well as on their assessment piece. Let's move them up to another level. Or this kid is suddenly struggling with this piece here. Let's get him down into something that's a little more intensive. So yeah, we have those conversations weekly. The groups aren't quite that fluid, but I'd say every 3 to 4 weeks, we look at moving and adjusting groups and see if that's what's needed.
And to what do you attribute that willingness of your teachers to adjust the students? How did you to adjust the groups? How did you make sure?
I would love to take credit for that, but that was actually in place before I got here. The previous principal, who's now our curriculum director in the district, I think just had some good, honest conversations, and I think they looked at a variety of RTI models before they kind of hammered out what was going to be best for them. And so they put together a pretty solid system here. That's one thing that as I've looked at, I don't think we need to adjust a lot other than some philosophy things of what is really going to be best for this kid. We have a great spec ed program and things like that, but if we look at our spec ed program, some students might actually get less support if we move them into spec ed than they will if they're in their intervention.
Yeah.
So we have to really examine, is this really what the student needs? Are they going to get more by moving there, or will they get more staying with the intervention support system? So that's just some conversations that we're having right now, and some of that is just philosophy stuff that we need to take and have some of those tough conversations and really take an idea and make sure that we examine this from all angles, and are we really making sure we're doing what's best, or are we just following a process? Because we don't want to get into that mode.
Yeah, certainly. So that sounds super exciting. When I was a teacher, we did a rise and stretch is what we called it, and every week we did an assessment, and then based on that specific assessment, we divided the students up by those who needed to rise up to where they should be and those who were able to stretch beyond what they had based on that one specific assessment. And what was so cool about that was that it was fluid because it was based on just that one thing, that one assessment, and that determined what they were doing the next day. And now at my school, we have groups, and we're trying to work out a better process, and you've given me some great ideas today, so I really appreciate this. We're trying to work out a better way to make sure that the groups are fluid, because last year and the year before, it was like the kid was put in a group at the Ames Web assessment at the beginning of the year, and then at the benchmark, and then in the winter benchmark, that's when they could change, and they were there forever. And what we want to do is make it so that kids can move as they gain skills or identify areas where they're deficit. And I think that you've given me some good guidance on how to start moving that conversation in that way, which I'm really excited about doing, because that sounds so much better. That, you know, fluid to 3 to 4 weeks or more often if they need to be, but making those decisions based on how the kid's doing is awesome.
And I think a lot of that depends on your resources and things too. I mean, if you have a bigger building, so if you have a fourth grade team that has 4 teachers on it, and you have 3 title teachers in your building and a spec ed teacher and maybe a gifted teacher, obviously you can create opportunities for a lot of fluid movement there, because there's not huge gaps. But if you have a building that only has 2 grade level teachers and 1 title teacher, well, you only have 3 groups you can create there. And unless you start to take advantage of aides and things like that in the building that could go and do some enrichment piece. We went and did a site visit at one school this year. They do the model of the whole building stops. There's 1 intervention time during that day. Everything stops. Specials, aides, principal, everybody will take a group and they'll figure out. So if a kid needs math support, or if a kid is really high in technology and does well in reading and math as well, you can take them and do some group like that. A lot of the specials teachers, the PE, music, art, they'll take those high flyers and go do enrichment activities with them and things like that. But they have a very different approach than we do. But there's things that we liked about it a lot too.
Yeah.
And next year we're actually looking at maybe to increase some of the flexibility and make sure that we can hit some math and things like that as well. We're looking at doing maybe a K1 or a K2 intervention time, so that again, some of our high kids can go from kindergarten up to first grade and read with the first graders and things like that. And we can have some folks there available to do math as well as just reading. Reading has been our heavy focus so far, unless we really have a struggling math student. That's really been our focus so far. So next year, we'd like to open up some opportunities by combining grade levels like that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And one of the things I really like about the Dufour approach is that it is, that book, Whatever It Takes, really, that's, you do whatever needs to be done to make sure those kids get the things that they need. And, if that means you do things differently than you have for the last 100 years, then you do it to make sure the kids get what they need. I just love that idea. So
yeah, that's one of the big things I've tried to push with folks too, is we just can't be afraid to experiment. We got to start to look at this like it's an experiment to figure out what can we do best for kids.
Right.
And we can't be afraid to try something and have it fail and not work, because then we just try something different the next time.
Right.
Rather than getting stuck in a routine. Like the saying goes, one of the scariest phrases in education or in life even is, we've always done it this way.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. So I asked 2 questions at the end of every interview. The first one is, what is one piece of advice or tip? You've given a ton today already, but what is the one thing you want somebody to take away so they can be a transformative principal like you are?
The biggest one that I'd say, and I've learned it from a new mentor, thanks to being on Twitter and having a PLN and things like that, is relationships. Relationships are the biggest thing. Jimmy Casas has become a mentor for me that I've known for a little over a year now, and it's definitely his mantra, and it makes a huge difference. And it's one, I learned it as a mistake once. Again, another one of the mistakes that I've made that I definitely learned from. We came in, I was encouraged to really focus on test scores and improving practices and stuff like that. And so I came in, I did that, and put relationships on the back burner. Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible idea. So relationships, number 1. Kids, teachers, parents, relationships, number 1.
Yeah. And you've written a few posts about that on your blog also, and I really appreciate that, like being out in the hall during parent-teacher conferences. That is really powerful. We started doing
I didn't know how powerful that was, but it cracked me up because teachers and parents and all sorts of folks said, that's awesome, I'm glad you're out here. And I was like, well, that was an easy enough change to do.
I know, right?
I was normally bored back in my office or waiting for the one tough conference that a teacher wants you there for some support,
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I'll just park myself out here, not a problem.
Yeah. So we start doing something similar where we, my principal and I, we sit outside in the hallway, and kids who are struggling, they come to us and just get extra support and help, tips to do at home, things like that. And it's not, we're not changing the world, but being out there and having a place for kids to come and parents to come and to just be available. And if we need to have a hard conversation, we can step into the office that's right there and have the conversation. And the other coach and the achievement coach are out there in the hall still continuing to talk to people. And, that was a little thing, but I feel like our teachers have really, really appreciated that. And that's something easy and simple to do.
It really, honestly, with the portability of the tools and technology that we have now, there is no reason for me to be back in an office somewhere. Right. It'd be great to have a conference room to be able to go to now and then, but there's no reason for me to be back there. And actually, another idea I got from Melinda Miller was that portable cart. She found that portable computer cart, and I was like, that thing's awesome. I got it on Amazon. I ordered one, I think, the next day. And that thing's been a great thing, too. Again, there's no reason that I can't check my emails in the back of a room. And actually, it was a conversation I had with George Kuros last year at ASCD, as he talked about how he was doing some of his job, and he wanted to be able to get out of his more of a central office thing, too. He said, every now and then I just need to see kids. So there's no reason I can't just take my laptop, sit in the back of a classroom, hear what's going on and everything like that, but check my emails, work on whatever professional development thing you needed to get ready. And I'm like, that's a good point. I don't know what made me think that I need to be back in there doing that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I try to get out and get into classrooms too, but heck, I don't need to be in an office really at all. I can take that around with me and do all that stuff and at least be visible.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just yesterday, a teacher called me, and I had stuff that I had to do on my computer. So I just took my computer down, sat next to the kid who was looking like he was going to have a rough time in a few minutes. And, he was looking at my computer, and I'd be doing something, and I'd say, how you doing on number 5 right there? And he'd say, good. And I'd say, do you need help doing it? No, I got it. And then he'd go back to working and then look at my computer with me. And then, we talked a little bit, but he didn't have a blow up like his teacher was expecting. And just my presence there was enough to calm him down. And that was mostly so that he could know that he could stay in control, even if he had to use me as a tool to help him do that. And I was fine with that. And I got my work done. I helped the teacher and I helped the student. And it was a great thing.
Exactly.
My last question is a kind of a softball question. What is something that you have in your office, if you're there, or somewhere to remind you of why you're doing your job and to keep you motivated?
I put a few sayings, kind of, one, I keep the books that have made a big difference to me. I keep them on a bookshelf right above my desk right here. I don't have a hutch on my desk. So I had them come and install, the old slat system, and then I put in some shelves, and I put a bookshelf right up there above me, and on that bookshelf are the books that I would, if anybody ever came in and asked me a question, I'd be able to pull up and grab and say, this book right here, I'll help you with that, and things like that. And every now and then, I need to pull them down and remind myself of some of the things too. But the other thing that I'll do is I have some great sayings that I picked up from folks and other leaders over the years and stuff like that, and I'll tape them on the bottom of that shelf so they're hanging right there in front of me that help me keep reminded. But one of the biggest things is I keep pictures of my kids on my desk, because one of my biggest mantras is this what I want for my kids? Is it anything we decided? Is this a teacher I would want my kids to have? Is this the kind of curriculum I would want my kids to go through? If I had my son in the principal's office getting chewed out for something he did wrong, how would I want to approach that? And sometimes those pictures are just enough to remind me of, I got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Even though this isn't my kid, I got to treat him like it's my kid.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that my kid's respected when I'm approaching this subject too. So those are some of the things I keep there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tom, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Great time.
Tell us how people can get a hold of you if they want to learn more from you.
If they want to follow me on Twitter, I am at T Whitford. That's TWHITFORD. Let's see, I'm on Facebook, but I really don't put much on Facebook. I'm mostly on there just connecting with some of the other professional friends and things that I have. The other tool that I've started to use a lot lately is Voxer. It's been an incredible tool for deepening relationships. Sometimes when you're having some of those professional conversations on Twitter, it's hard to get past the 140 character limit and have some deeper conversations.
Right.
Or if there's things that you want to be a touch more private, even when you go over to direct message, you're still limited in characters.
Right.
And so Voxer's been a way for us to have true conversation. But it's kind of nice because it's back and forth. I actually get to, unlike with my wife, sometimes I don't get to finish a thought. She'll hear where I'm going and cut me off. On Voxer, you get to finish a thought and have it out, and then and the other person gets the chance to respond without being interrupted either. So it's great. I really love the tool. But like I said, mostly I've really deepened some relationships and friendships with folks that I've connected with on Twitter. So it's been a great tool.
That's awesome. I'd love to experience some other administrators that are using Voxer. So I'll send you my...
I can give you a full list if you want. There's some great guys out there on it. And was Melinda Miller, Principal J, Jessica Johnson. Those two there teach me things all the time. Kurt Reese, another incredible principal. He's kind of my self-check that I use a lot. I constantly go, what would Kurt Reese do here? And so now I have the opportunity to call him and ask him, hey, Kurt, awesome. What would you do?
That is awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it, and I've learned so much from you, and I know that the people who are listening to this will too. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks for connecting with me.
Hey, no problem. Thank you. Thank you so much for downloading and listening to this podcast. Please subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher, and please feel free to give us a rating on Stitcher Radio or on iTunes so that we can help spread the word about how much we're learning in this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones.